Linturi, the Cabinet Secretary.
This House resolves that the President dismisses the Honorable Franklin Mithika Linturi from the office of the Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development on the following grounds. That Honorable Franklin Mithika Linturi, acting as a Cabinet Secretary responsible for the Ministry of Agriculture and Livestock Development, appears to have committed gross violation of these constitutional provisions by 1, not undertaking public participation with leaders, stakeholders, or even departments within the ministry in the implementation of far-reaching policy decisions.
Okay, so what happened in Parliament today? It started off, with the Speaker much earlier, and Sam, take us through at least today's events before we, get into the whys and the wherefores. Anyway.
Right. Obviously, it started off with a discussion about the charges that are being leveled against the Cabinet Secretary, and I think it was over 100. I think it was it 109
110?
people that around that figure that had signed for the impeachment of the Cabinet Secretary for Agriculture. And of course, the genesis of this is what we've been talking about probably 2 weeks ago about the questions of fertilizer and. Obviously, the Cabinet Secretary came off as defending what appears very wrong to be defending. Now, the members of Parliament have come together. If you look at the document that was presented by Wamboka, including the signatures of the people that had supported that, then you see, yes, majority of them appear to come from the opposition benches, that is the Azimio coalition, but there are also a few that are coming from the UDA side of the House. So having a conversation on what route should be followed, and eventually there was that proposal to appoint a committee of 11. The motion was put to the question, and of course that was agreed upon. But obviously you hear, including the leader of majority, saying that this is just sort of a witch hunt by the opposition benches. But here we are. So it is up to the committee to kick the ball and put it rolling to look into those allegations that have been leveled against the Cabinet Secretary. So he'll have an opportunity to obviously explain himself or defend himself, to exonerate himself from what the claims may be. But this is one test for Parliament when it comes to the 3 roles it has: the role of legislation, the lawmaking, representation, and then oversight. So if there is any point that the current Parliament is getting to show its oversight, then this is one perfect example, and you'll be waiting to see how that pans out within the committee. But eventually, whatever decision the committee is able to make, the whole House will have the final word whether to uphold. Should the committee decide that they're going to impeach the Cabinet Secretary, then the House will have the space and time to consider it, either agree with the committee or disagree with the committee, and whatever they decide, then that it carries the day. But should the committee recommend that you do not find any grounds for impeachment of the Cabinet Secretary, then the matter and it cannot be overturned by the plenary. So, I mean, we have to wait and see how that transpires. But obviously, it has been quite an eventful week starting off. I think it was on Tuesday when you were on air that we got information about the arrests of officials from the National Cereals and Produce Board. And we got information that they'd actually been in a meeting from 11 a.m. up until 8 p.m. And that meeting had actually been attended by Linturi's principal secretary, who is also a member of the board. He can be there in person, or he can send an alternate person to represent him. But that particular meeting, we are told that he was there. A meeting from 11 to 8 p.m. How much time is that? Those are a lot of hours. And
only for them to then...
Yes. So it looks like everything had actually been planned to really lead to that decision. And we are seeing them obviously being processed in court. So it is an important step, knowing that too well. About 3 weeks ago, the Cabinet Secretary, Mithika Linturi, was here in this studio and was saying that NCPB has no role in especially this question of fake fertilizer or substandard fertilizer like he preferred. And there were many questions as to, is it that NCPB can actually sell whatever they receive, that they have no responsibility of ensuring what they are receiving is as what is indicated. So this investigation into the NCPB officials being taken to court upon the approval of that recommendation by the DPP, or Director of Public Prosecutions, is just going to build this case against Mythical Inturi. So the question is he directly culpable? And I think the House will have an opportunity to go through the information and evidence available.
Yeah, the majority leader seems to think otherwise. Let's listen.
Order, members. I find this motion as a decoy, as such decoy, to make sure that we hide those who are ultimately culpable by derailing the Committee for Agriculture from doing its work. And I want to encourage members of the Agriculture Committee to get to the bottom of this fertilizer issue, Honorable Speaker. Ensure that the inquiry pinpoints to us those who are ultimately culpable. And that is why, Honorable Speaker, I was saying, if I were the Honorable Jack Wamboka, I would have been very patient to wait for the Agriculture Committee to tell us who or which organization or which particular state officers are culpable.
Yvonne, I don't know if this will be a case of voting along political lines, or because we saw some of that. Yeah, the 109 or so that you mentioned, there were some UDA members of parliament. But when I listened to the debate today, Yvonne, most of those who are not supporting the motion to impeach were actually from the government side, giving all types of reasons, including some members of the same Agriculture Committee that the leader majority is talking about. And this is the committee we've seen going around the country. We even never had them having the fertilizers brought right before their eyes in terms of...
when they were sniffing it.
Or when they were sniffing it, when it was said to have...
They were performing the smell test.
Yeah, and even the investigative feature that was done by the team at African Censored and John Alan Namu, they've been before these committees. I think there was
both
a screening
and the National Assembly.
There was even a screening, I think, a day or two ago by the same parliamentarians of the same feature. So there's this whole thing about what exactly are we watching, what exactly are we hearing from those who are coming to appear before us, including some of the suspects who are before court, including owners of the companies that have been mentioned. Are they going to take all that into consideration when the voting or the committee sits and decides what next? We've said that they have 10 days to actually come up with a decision whether they find the allegations are not substantiated. If they are unsubstantiated, it ends there. But if there's something there, like Gituko was talking about, the minister will have a chance to come and be heard, akuwe na nafasi ya kujitetea. And if the motion to adopt the report of the select committee gets this support, a majority, which is 176 members, then the president will have no other choice but to relieve the CS of his duties. But I think in this context, they need to look at the issues raised. Who is responsible? Who is ultimately responsible? Is it the Minister for Agriculture, who has, for the longest time denied that there was any fake fertilizer in circulation in the country, spoke numerous times, even invoked the opposition in this whole thing, saying that hakuna kitu kama hiyo. I had some terms I'd never heard of. You soil nini, use your fertilizer. Someone has to be responsible for this.
Soil conditioner.
Soil conditioner.
The way you've got hair conditioner.
Exactly. So someone has to take responsibility. Is the CS or not? I think what the members of parliament need to do is look at this in terms of merit, in terms of the evidence that is presented, and in terms of the issues that are on the table. We talked about how fertilizer mbovu haitachagua itaenda kwa nyumba ya nani.
Yeah.
It may end up on your table. But this is a matter that is important, needs to be looked at in that sense.
And you know, the speaker today, while giving instructions to the members of the committee on beginning work, I think at 6 p.m. They even elected the chair of that particular committee. But he did say this is a quasi-judicial investigative process. But Linus, based on history, impeachments are also highly political. Is there any quasi-judicial anything, any forensic investigations? Politics will obviously play a part.
If anyone was actually serious about investigating the fake fertilizer question, then we would be seeing this coming from the investigative agencies like DCI, EACC maybe, and probably an active Office of the Directorate of Public Prosecution actually taking action. Because what we are now seeing, this is a political process. Impeachment is a political process. And throughout history in this country, impeachment always takes the political fault lines. There are so many considerations, that go into that process. And you can see the early warning, Sam Gituko, early warning signs.
Early warning symptoms.
Yes. When you see the argument by the majority leader, obviously seeing politics in this and all that. The next stage is going to be very interesting when the committee gets down to work. And I want to remind you of one time there was a cabinet secretary who was taken before Parliament on similar circumstances, but on the NYS issue. I think some 791 million shillings had been misappropriated. And because the CS was the line CS, she or he was taken to Parliament. And the spectacle remains unforgettable because when she was appearing before the committee, there emerged a lot of other members of Parliament calling themselves friends of the committee. So these friends of the committee will now give you an indication of how this is going. But Linturi is also in a tricky spot. Tricky spot because fertilizer touches on, if you're talking politics, then fertilizer touches on the voting base. And the voting base, let's try and divide the opposition here and the government and say, the voting base of the Kenya Kwanza administration is heavily in agricultural areas. You're talking of Rift Valley and Mount Kenya region, where some of this fertilizer has been circulated. So here is a catch-22, just like the number of cabinet secretaries. It's a real catch-22 for the Kenya Kwanza administration, for President Ruto. When Parliament starts the process of interrogating this issue of fertilizer, those members of Parliament, including the friends of the committees, will also be careful about the voices of the farmers. And farmers, as you saw in Murang'a the other day, can actually make you have a long day as a political leader. If you remember the tea farmers that were in that stadium in Murang'a, they are capable of piling pressure on the political leadership. So here is a very, very interesting case that is going to come up. On one hand, if you're trying to play politics at the electoral level, then remember there is the voter, who is the farmer, who is not happy with how the fertilizer issue has been handled. Then obviously, and this will be very interesting to see, whether the animosity between Azimio and Kenya Kwanza will also...
considering present...
Yes, considering the current situation where are we? There's some form of detente, there's peace,
right?
Working together. And so the fault lines are not clear at the moment. That poses a lot of risk for Mithika Linturi. Because to survive in such situations, you need as many of those fault lines as possible. So if the farmers one is not working, the Kenya Kwanza Azimio one should save you. Or you'll see, there'll be some arguments on the floor of that house that, this debate is to embarrass the president. Yeah, because if you touch one of the cabinet secretaries, then what are you talking about? You're talking about the entire cabinet. And there'll be those who will say, yeah, so be it. In fact, the list should grow longer. So it's going to be very, very interesting. But impeachment has also been a very petty process in Kenya.
Oh, yeah.
So petty that it was hard already, and this from our parliamentary reporters, people who are talking of, Linturi has been arrogant. So we're going to fix him. let's not forget that members of parliament at one point rejected an appointee to secretary to the cabinet. And when you investigated further, we were told in Mkonogam, she doesn't atoi, so she won't give, she won't spend some of the confidential account well.
My gosh.
And this is the pettiness that is also in our politics. So don't trust those members of parliament with high-minded ideals sometimes. So these things can walk from the highs of think about the farmer, think about the criminal
food
element
security,
of having fake fertilizer, to the basic of, Linturi didn't pick my call.
The deal now.
It can go to that.
And obviously the cabinet secretary, you know, is standing firm. He's, you know, putting on a brave face. Let's listen to him. Hati Shiki.
Angalia sasa mimi niko katika serikali na rais anajua ile kazi mimi nafanya. Ukiangalia sasa na wakati ule nilikuwa nahangaishwa na Uhuru Kenyatta na Kinandisi hayo huku. Si unaona tofauti mambo ilibadilika. Sasa unafikiria mimi ni mtu wa kutishwa ama kuhangaishwa na watu? Hapana. Nyinyi niombeeni tu niwe na nguvu, nihangaike, pamba tukuze, tufungue engineering, tulete cool hapa, avocado tutengeneze, Wakenya wawe na chakula ya kutosha.
So
yeah. Well, if you were my age, there's a song by Wahoo. City shaky. Anyway.
Okay, so he has asked for prayers. Akuwe na nguvu.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the 3 charges because they split into 3: gross misconduct, gross violation of the Constitution, and then serious reason to believe the CS has committed a crime. You know, it's raining. I don't want to pour any cold water, whatever sort of water.
There's lots of cold water to go around.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of water.
There's enough,
Yeah.
Look, if you look at those charges, I mean, it's going to be very difficult, really, to prove.
And the third one, no?
Serious reason to believe CS has committed a crime. Of course, we'll wait to hear what the details there are. Remember, the threshold to get to where that motion is to have the signatures sufficient.
Yeah.
Then the House passes a resolution to constitute a committee to probe the impeachment allegations. So we'll wait to see, yes, but it might be very difficult to prove. Again, if you are to look even at other impeachment motions against governors, it has been more about the political case than the legal case. So it can go either way. But yes, we'll wait to hear what the political powers that be would want to see as the outcome of this case. Remember, there are 3 cabinet secretaries that had been mentioned in the vetting report.
Shortlisted.
Adversely mentioned in the vetting report.
Right.
One of them had been rejected,
Yeah.
but obviously that was overturned by the House. The other cabinet secretaries were Mithika Linturi and Aisha Jumwa because they had some pending matters, but the House ignored those facts and went ahead to approve their appointment. This might actually be a small issue.
Yeah, and remember, he's a politician, huh?
Yeah, compared to what was happening that time, it might actually be a small issue. But what we must not forget is about his conscience, because Kenyans have cried in this country. They have raised questions. Representatives of the people in the name of members of parliament have taken an impeachment motion against him, and he becomes on record the very first cabinet secretary to face an impeachment motion before the Parliament of the Republic of Kenya. So whatever that information is telling him, then it's going to be beyond the decision of the House. It is going to be something that he will live with and has to decide on how to run the ministry should he survive.
Well, Sam, that last bit is not known to be very resident in the DNA of our national politics. But talking of the appearance before, was it a rally somewhere there? This is typically the script, and it will play out quite more intensely as the events progress. Because politicians in Kenya actually go back to the people for their defense. And, you know, when he said Sitishiki, he was talking to his crowd. Yeah. And showing that, you know, I'm still firm, I'm strong and all that. And I remember when former Finance Minister Amos Kimunya was facing a very similar impeachment process. He went to rallies in Kinangop and Nyandarua, where he comes from, and I remember him saying, "It's not me they want, they are targeting you."
Yes, yes.
Yeah. So these are all weapons that, you know, you pick your spear, tablespoon if you can, whatever you can lay your hands on to fight. And some of those arguments, especially before charged mobs, even if they don't help you, they can keep you going. Because when the crowd cheers, I don't know what it is that it feeds in political blood. But it's like a lifeline, the Mtuwetu thing. So I think down this impeachment process, you will hear, you know, Mount Kenya East, Mount Kenya West, and things like that. We will suddenly have a very clear new map of our geographical backgrounds, because everything comes into political fights in this country, and some conscience is the last thing in the list.
Well, it's such a bad day for C.S. Linturi, because I saw a TIFA survey ranking him in not very flattering grades as the worst performing cabinet secretary.
On that note, Sam, I think you should start our final words, Leo. Yeah.
It's not based on any grading.